there, he is going to be showing us how to cure and smoke salmon. And the great thing is we get to try some. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Chef Wayne Smith from Western Colorado Community College. He's one of the instructors there. And go right ahead, Chef. Tell us a little bit about you and what we're going to be learning today.
Thanks, Brian. So I've been teaching at the culinary school for 20 years. And I'm
not to freak you out.
Okay. All right. Ooh. Test. Good. All right. And so I wanted to share with everybody today. It's always nice when you can kind of do luxury food yourself. And salmon gravlax is considered something of a luxury dish, right? It can be really, really expensive, but it's really easy to take salmon from the store and turn it into gravlax or smoked salmon, something that you can buy for $7 or $8 a pound, turn it into something worth $20 or $30 a pound, and save yourself a lot of money and have a great fresh product. So we're going to get out. Got a whole salmon right here.
Fresh from the ocean.
Fresh.
This thing looks beautiful.
Yeah. So the first thing is our freshness check. We want to make sure we got a nice quality salmon. Salmon on the bone, any fish whole is going to last longer, have a longer shelf life than fillets. The salmon has its natural defense system against bacteria. And so, especially like if you get, I remember the first time I got Copper River salmon from Alaska, and it was just covered with this slime. But that's the mucus that protects the fish from bacteria. And so that's an important part of it, and it keeps it fresh. So we want to have a whole fish. I check and make sure there's no cuts into the gut lining. It's nice and clean. The flesh should be firm throughout, nice shine to it, nice and wet looking. The eye should be full and glossy, and the gills should be nice and red. So those are kind of the freshness checks that we're looking at. And then, of course, the smell. Should have just a nice ocean smell. Shouldn't smell fishy or rank in any way. So we check it all out, and we can go right into carving it up. So I actually like to have it with the back to me. And I'm going to get out, this is called a scimitar. Just we don't need a nice big knife, big enough to get through that fish. And I'm going to take the two fillets off of the backbone. So starting right behind what's called the collar, which is kind of a bony piece right behind the gills, we can go in, cutting towards the head till I hit the backbone. I can feel that bone there. I don't want to go through that. I just kind of flip my knife over, and I start cutting through the ribs.
And Chef, you don't want to throw away that collar, right? Because that's an incredible piece of meat, isn't it?
We're actually going to do something with that.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're going to use it. Oh, did I cut through that? Went right through the backbone. Let's try that again. There we go. So there's one fillet. And if I've done a good job, it should be nice and clean. I should see the vertebrae. Here's where I went through, and I kind of jacked it up. But that's okay. I've got a plan for the backbone, too. Flip it over, and same on the other side. Keep hitting that. There we go. And so I've got two nice fillets. So this is about a 10-pound salmon, and we're going to get a couple fillets about 3.5 to 4 pounds each off of that. Now I've got this thing to deal with right here. And we don't want to just throw that away. There's a lot of good stuff there. We mentioned the collar, but also this backbone. There's a lot of flesh still on that. No matter how good a cutter you are, I kind of screwed that up, but you still are going to have some meat left on that, even if you do a perfect job. And there's a couple things we can do. We take sometimes just a kitchen spoon and run it down either side of the backbone and strip all that flesh off, and you can flake that up. You can smoke that and use that in cream cheese. You can throw it in pasta. You can make salmon patties. A lot of different stuff to utilize that. We're going to do something a little different today, and we're just going to grill it just like that. Makes a great snack, appetizer, bar food. So we're just going to separate that off, maybe take the tail off. And I'm going to grab a student here. Sammy, come on up here. And what we're going to do with this is just throw it right on the grill. It's beautiful, just like that. And we're going to glaze it with teriyaki. So my teriyaki glaze is just more or less equal parts soy sauce, mirin, sake, and brown sugar. And then a little bit of ginger and what was the other thing I threw? Oh, garlic. Ginger and garlic. And more, like I said, more or less equal parts, but if you like something more than something else, change it up a little bit. It's not that important. So make it so it tastes good to you. And we're going to put that on the grill, and we just brush teriyaki on there. Now, teriyaki, really, a lot of times we think of as a marinade. Shouldn't be a marinade. It's too tough on the meat. It makes the meat tough, actually, to soak in that teriyaki. So all it needs to be is glazed on there as you cook. It's going to give you plenty of flavor. Great. So we'll give you that, and you go play on the grill. Make us some good. Now, hold on. We almost forgot the collars, because we can grill those too. So I just take those off there. I'm going to make sure there's no gills. Gills, not so tasty.
And I'll tell you, folks, it's pretty wild because in America, we aren't taught that every piece of the animal should be used in some way or another. And it's really important, and I really appreciate when a chef does something with the collar, because it's such an incredible meat. I've had so many chefs prepare it in so many different ways.
Fabulous. Halibut or salmon, all kinds of fish, excellent collars. The head even we can use, if we take the gills out, we can use the head to make stock, fish stock. Yeah, simmer that and pick some meat off of that as well. Okay, I'm just going to set that aside. And we'll go back to our fillets here, the premium stuff. And we're going to do two kinds of cures. We're going to do gravlax, which is Scandinavian origin, and it's just simply salt cured, never cooked. And then we're also going to do hot smoke, which I do in a brine, and then smoke at about 225. So that one is a fully cooked product. But before I get to that, I need to clean off all this peritoneal lining and the ribs that are still attached. And we're going to get to another really good trim part here in a minute. Any cartilage from the fins, I'm going to want to trim away. Okay, pretty clean on that side. Now, we have another really nice piece here that I usually separate out, and that's the belly. More rib. So the belly's just kind of the strip right down here, and you're mentioning utilization, and we're not always taught utilization here. In Japan, they'll cut fish the way we cut beef, into different cuts. You know, it's not just fish. There's parts of it that are different. It's not all the same. And on the salmon, in the case of the salmon and many fish, tuna's another one, the belly is really fatty. It's delicious. So I take that off. You know, so we're just going to trim the belly right about there, make a nice even piece for our fillet. And if you look at that, there's just tons of marbling of fat in that. And it's really rich, really tasty. So I smoke this, and I do a really sweet brine and make what we call salmon candy. And so that is great for backpacking because it's just super high energy stuff. Lots of calories in there when you need a lot of fuel.
And could you probably dry something like that?
You could dry that, definitely.
Dry it, make sort of like a salmon jerky or a salted jerky.
Be good stuff. So this one, the first one here we'll do as a gravlax. And so what I'm going to do is first, where'd it go? I need here it is, some dill. And we're just going to take fresh dill, loads of fresh dill, and we're going to put that on there. We're going to put it on some cheesecloth first. That makes it a little easier to work with.
This is such an incredible dish, folks. The first time I had ever had this, I was taught the same technique to make this back in 1990 in Denmark. The Danish, this is a big thing. As you said, it's a Norwegian dish, but the Danish love this.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear I ate fish for breakfast, lunch, and dinner almost every day when I was over in Denmark.
North Atlantic salmon is such high quality fish.
Well, and this is so easy to do, this dish right here. A lot of people don't realize, like Chef said, you take a $8 a pound salmon and all of a sudden turn it into something that's worth $20 or $30 a pound, and it lasts for quite a while.
Yeah. You can freeze it and defrost it. Okay, so we're just going to get it on some cheesecloth. I'm going to clean all the little bits off. And I leave it on the skin. It's actually easier to cut if it's still attached to the skin. And if you're not comfortable with kind of cutting your own salmon, that's kind of daunting. You can certainly go buy a fillet at the store. And it doesn't have to be a whole side. You could do a little piece of salmon the same way. Although if you're gonna do the work, you might as well do enough to really enjoy. Now I almost forgot, we have the pin bones in here. So we're gonna take some little tweezers and just pull those out. They run usually just over halfway down the fillet. So the ribs run right on the surface, easy to trim away. These have to be pulled out. So these are just a flat nose tweezer, so minimal invasiveness to the fish.
Chef, do you think that's what intimidates people the most about fish is the bones?
The bones, absolutely. I never got much fish growing up because my mother was afraid of fish. Because when she was a child, she was always told, don't swallow a bone, you'll choke on a bone. And so she had this kind of fear of fish. And I have to admit that I will eat just about anything. I've eaten ants in the jungle, cricket tacos, but fish bones. When I get a fish bone in there, I'm just like, I'm not hungry anymore. It's really not appetizing. So
the funny thing about that is most of us are afraid of fish bones that we're going to choke, and I think no one has died from choking on a fish bone.
Not a big news item, is it? All right, so now we're ready for dill. And we're just going to pack some fresh dill on there pretty well. And just being in contact is going to give plenty of flavor.
So first off, is anyone in the crowd intimidated by what he's doing? This looks really challenging, doesn't it? Looks really hard. You got some cheesecloth, some fresh dill. Looks challenging, doesn't it? I don't think so.
No, this is easy stuff. I'm going to slice a lemon.
And I bet this is where you could play with it because you could use a Meyer lemon.
Yes.
You could use an orange. You could use lots of
Absolutely.
different things to experiment. Any kind of citrus is the main thing that you're trying to get here.
I was looking through some of my files, and I don't really remember doing this, but at one point I did a ginger gravlax. And then I served that on wontons with a Hawaiian-style guacamole. So
That sounds good.
another one that's in a textbook we have is a beet and horseradish cured gravlax. And you grate fresh beets and fresh horseradish and mix that with your salt cure and pack that on the fish. And the salmon just picks up that red color of the beets, and it's still partially orange, red. It's like this sunset. It's just the most beautiful presentation. It's great stuff.
That sounds awesome. And folks, one of the things I hope you're hearing from him is that experimentation is okay. Try to do anything with something different, and you'll be a rock star at your next dinner.
I'm going to combine equal parts salt and sugar, about half a cup of each, and just combine that. Salt is very important to the curing process. Salt, high salt concentrations cause bacterial cell walls to break down, so it prevents bacterial growth. Salt will also draw moisture out of the fish, and lowering the water content also makes it more difficult for bacteria to grow. So salt's very important to the preservative effect here. Salt's also really salty, So we put in the sugar to kind of help offset that saltiness. So we're just going to really liberally apply that. And don't worry, you don't need all that. A little less at the tail because it's so thin. But that fish should be pretty well coated in salt and sugar at this point. And then we're just going to roll it up. Kind of hanging on to everything here as we give it the first roll. And it doesn't need to be super tight. You just want to get it so everything's going to stay in place. And then we're going to put that into a pan. So I'll take this one. Let's see. Yeah, I'm done with that now. And put that in there, and you can press it with weights, but it's not absolutely necessary. You want to refrigerate that, and then turn it once a day. Just flip it over so that it's curing evenly. And you're going to start to see a lot of moisture come out, a lot of water in the pan. And it usually takes about 3 to 5 days for that to fully cure. And it's going to get really firm. You'll tell when the fish is done because it really firms up. A lot of the water is coming out of the fish, and it gets much firmer. And it's going to look something like this one over here. And put on some fresh gloves.
I love having all these great chefs up here because it makes my job so easy. When I don't really even have to say anything because just watching the food says it all. And so, Chef Wayne, thank you. Just a quick little shout out. We're here at the Mountain. Just a reminder so I don't screw it up here. We are at the Colorado Mountain Wine Fest.
You're going to carve
here
this.
in beautiful Palisade, Colorado.
So start carving and doing the trays.
And we have been fortunate enough at the culinary demo tent here to have Western Colorado Community College instructors and students here all day. We've heard some great stories. This is young Allie, I believe.
Did you guys ever see
Sammy, thank you.
ever see any other salt?
My producer over there. Thank you. This is Sammy,
somebody
but
used my
she's
salt.
in her fourth
That's okay.
year.
We'll fake it.
That is something I do remember.
Oh, is that her?
And she started this program back in high school, which is pretty cool. And so she plans on staying here
That's all right.
and sharing her culinary expertise with all of you residents of Palisade and the Western Slope.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so, oh yes, there you go. Perfect, thank you, Sammy. So now the trick to this, it's salt cured, but it's not cooked, so it's firmer, but it still has that raw texture. It's no fun to eat if it's in big, thick slices. And I will tell you, that's easy. This is medium. This takes a little practice to do this part, but it's just slicing thinly. The most important thing is the right tools. So you want a sharp knife that's a fairly long blade, long enough that it's got to be longer than the salmon fillet is wide, so you actually can move your knife back and forth and effectively cut. So we're just going to angle the knife, starting up at the head here, and I'm lefty, so I'm arranged that way. And we're just going to cut thin slices, and I should be able to see the knife right through the salmon as I cut. And as we keep going, we'll start to see the skin emerge at the bottom. And now we've got that nice gravlax for our bagels or salads or whatever you might want to put it on. Let's make sure it's nice. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
We have a question. So she had asked, does it matter how long the curing process is when you're using different types of salt?
I could imagine it could affect it. Your real gauge is going to be how firm it is. And you'll definitely tell it's much firmer than when you started. And
Just like if I were to use like more of a sea salt or Mediterranean type of salt.
I would use something that's a non-iodized, just kind of a natural, in its natural form salt, and any salt should work. Now, really coarse salt, you might have a little bit harder time getting it. You're trying to get that salt to dissolve in the water that's coming out of the fish and be able to, and the salt's going to penetrate into the flesh to some degree. So real coarse stuff is not great, but you don't need to spend a lot of money on salt either. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Now the other one, the other half, we're going to do a brine. The difference between dry cure and brine is dry cure is just salt, sugar, whatever on the fish. Brine is dissolved in water. So we're going to go through the same process here of removing ribs, cleaning this fillet up. Keep the belly and remove pin bones. And when you're doing this, if you decide you're going to try to take bones out of fish, a lot of them went with that piece, you'll notice there's kind of an angle to the muscle structure. It kind of goes towards the head. So to keep from tearing the flesh up, I want to be pulling just slightly towards the head as I take those out. And I just run my finger from head to tail, and if I've missed a bone, it'll kind of pop up, and I can take that out.
And folks, just so everyone knows, we do have this recipe as well as two of the other recipes from earlier in the day up on the table, and so after the show, you're more than welcome to come on up and grab.
I just realized something I kind of ran through on the gravlax, wherever it went. It's back here. I normally, too, would put a little booze on it, and I just didn't do that. So before I do the dill, I'd sprinkle gin or aquavit or something like that on there, or if you want to do limes, do some tequila, whatever it is, but just a little flavor enhancement. So,
And Chef, could you drink that as well while you're sprinkling it on the fish?
maybe. Let's sprinkle it first. It's not too late. We'll just put it right in the mix.
I love that, a true chef.
The answer is yes. All right. That's good. Okay, so for our brine, we're going to go with a gallon of water. And somehow my salt for this got misplaced, so pretend I'm adding a cup of salt.
It's going to absorb all the water.
Yeah. So we're going to add salt to that. And then the same thing, salt is salty, so we're going to add some sweetener. In this case, half a cup of brown sugar and half a cup of honey.
Oh, darn.
So we get kind of a sweet brine going here for this. Thank you. We're going to add some garlic powder, onion powder, and pickling spice. And as you mentioned, with the adaptability of the gravlax, same thing goes on brine. The basic is salt, sugar, water, or really just salt and water. And from there, you can flavor it however you want. This is our chance to play in the kitchen. And then we're going to stir until the sugar and all the imaginary salt in there dissolves. And then I've got the bellies in this pan. We're going to add the fillet. And I like to put it actually skin side up because it will float a bit in the water. And that just makes sure the flesh is kind of down in the brine. You can have brines of varying strength. I've found that what works for me well is 1 cup salt to 1 gallon water. Stronger than that, if you get busy and you don't get it out quick enough, you can have very salty product. But with just 1 cup of salt, you can leave it a little longer. You don't have to worry so much about it becoming super salty. Might not have quite as much preservative effect, but a little bit more palatable.
And Chef, recently I've been seeing a lot of wing recipes for chicken wings that they're brining the wings as well.
Yeah.
Brining is something that's becoming more popular? Or?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think people discovered that With brine, another one I've seen that's fantastic is to brine your shrimp. Give your shrimp about 2 hours of brine before you cook them. And what that does, when you get the salt going penetrating into the muscle, into the flesh, every kind of protein item, whether it's salmon or shrimp or chicken or beef, has soluble proteins, meaning proteins that dissolve into water. Eggs are a good example. When eggs are raw, the white is liquid, clear, and when you cook it, the soluble proteins in the egg white coagulate and become white. And so you have those same types of proteins in every kind of flesh you might cook. So adding salt in a brine makes some of those soluble proteins stay soluble even when they're cooked. This is why it's become so popular to brine turkeys, so you have a juicy turkey, or brining the shrimp, as I mentioned, or the fish here, or chicken wings. It's going to make a juicier and more flavorful product because the salt is throughout instead of just on the surface.
And can you brine for several days, or how long
Okay.
can you brine, and what's the brining process?
Generally, it depends on the size of the product and the strength of the brine. So with that 1 cup to 1 gallon ratio, for larger items like this, usually 24 hours. Shrimp or chicken wings might be somewhere around 2 to 4 to 6 hours. And you just have to experiment a little bit and see what allows enough time for it to completely penetrate and do its thing. Okay? So we just put a little plastic wrap on that, 24 hours in the refrigerator. And I magically have one ready. Right here. Yeah. So we're just going to flip these over. The linen company's going to love me. And our next step, I can't really show you here. This one's completely done. But our next step would be to take it out of the brine, give it a little rinse, maybe soak it in water for about 10 minutes, and then put it onto a pan, put it on a rack, back in the refrigerator, uncovered for at least a day, 24 hours. And it's going to dry out on the surface. And that's a very important step when we're doing hot smoke. Remember, we have soluble proteins. And have any of you ever seen where you grill a burger, and as it's starting to cook, you get this weird gray stuff coming up to the surface? That's the soluble protein. As it gets hot, it coagulates, it solidifies, and it comes out to the surface. The same thing will happen here, but the pellicle prevents that stuff from penetrating through the surface and giving you an ugly appearance on the top. Also, that dry surface allows the smoke to really stick and flavor the fish. So it gives you a nice shine, a nice clean finish. So that drying process is very important to smoking fish. From that point, what I did was, after 24 hours of drying, I heat up a little honey so it's nice and runny, and just lightly brush honey all over the fish and sprinkle a little bit of cracked black pepper and cracked pink peppercorns on it. I smoked it for an hour at 225 degrees. We're shooting for an internal temperature of 145 is fully cooked on fish.
So it sounds like you're smoking crack here. Black pepper, crack this.
Yes, yes.
I was going to repeat that. The gentleman said it sounds like we're smoking crack.
Yes, we're smoking crack. Cracked pepper, cracked pink pepper, cracked fish. But this is going to have a completely different texture. Where that has the still raw texture and actually has that oily shine to it, this is going to look like fully cooked fish, and it's going to flake apart more easily. So you can either just flake it up, or you just need a very sharp knife to cut it. And so your hot smoke generally is over 180, 190 degrees. Cold smoke, sometimes cured fish like this will be cold smoked for preservative effect or flavor. And cold smoke is down under 100 degrees. And they do smokehouses that are very, very tall, so that as the smoke rises, the heat dissipates, and you're not cooking that fish. We fake that sometimes in our smoker by putting pans of ice in the bottom to keep the temperature low. You know, just kind of have something there to offset the heat that's coming out of the smoker.
Is it gas or charcoal?
Ours actually at work is at the school is electric, and it's a convection. It has air blowing, circulates the smoke. We have a couple little smoke boxes. I want to talk about the wood some. Fish is pretty mild in flavor, and so we have to use a mild smoke. And in this case, alder wood. Alder is a traditional wood for smoking fish, but any kind of wood that's less flavorful, like I wouldn't recommend hickory or mesquite for fish. It's going to overwhelm the flavor of the fish. And I really did a pretty light smoke. I didn't use a whole lot of wood on it. And our smoker, we can kind of control how much the smoke stays in the smoke box. And I kind of opened that up so the smoke wouldn't be there too long. So it was just a very light smoke on the fish, enough to kind of color it and lightly flavor it. Okay?
So I'd really say one of these is for the beginner.
Yeah.
Right here. This is definitely a more advanced, but
Yeah.
they both look incredible. Once again, we are at, so I remember, Colorado Mountain Wine Fest. We are here with Chef Wayne, Sammy, and Evan. I finally got that right after an entire day. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to be passing out these samples. I want to thank the chef. We've got one last thing here. I think Chef is going to tell everyone about what he did on the grill.
So this was, remember we had the backbone, and Sammy went and glazed that with teriyaki and grilled that off. And you just start, great way to serve this, Asian style, just put it on a big platter and put some accompaniments with it, whatever you want, and just go at it. One fun thing to do is maybe fish tacos. So you put that on a platter and you put a few, like shredded cabbage, tomatoes, pico de gallo, chopped peppers, and some warm tortillas out there, and you just start making your own tacos out of that. Anything like that.
That sounds so good.
Serve it with a little scoop of rice, the teriyaki, and we're good to go. All right, yeah, so we're going to start building some samples here.
Well, thank you, everyone. And
Yes,
thank you for all coming down. Thank you, Chef Wayne. Thank you for all the wonderful students at Colorado.
Yep. So we'll start
Western
building.
Colorado Community College. But so enjoy, everyone. Thanks for coming out to the Wine Fest today. Thank you for everything. Enjoy the rest of the day. And for us at the Modern Eater, and for all of the students and the chefs, thank you.